the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And Anthony, this weekend, the quarterbacks, they're going to be under some pressure. We're going to find out just how well Jayden Daniels feels and deals with pressure. And depending on how that goes, we could be entering the final weeks of being able to use that hour opener. I mean, we could always use it for posterity. Arguing with Paulie is, a national pastime. But Anthony, the idea that the best quarterback that's been here in the last 30 years is Kirk Cousins by far, which is who that hour opener that you just heard is about. And the idea that, the rest of these guys can't even get into pressure. Commanders have got themselves into some form of pressure, about as much pressure as you can get to in October this weekend. The real pressure awaits in November and December and hopefully January and ultimately February. But, Anthony, I do believe that there's a bit of a fight on their hands this weekend with the old Baltimore Ravens. And I actually think one of the headlines is more true than typically is when a matchup like this happens.
Which headline are we speaking of?
Lamar Jackson versus Jayden Daniels.
Ooh.
Because most of the time when people say that, they're Lamar Jackson versus Patrick Mahomes. And it's like, you know who's never going to be on the field at the same time? Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. Now, I'm not telling you that secretly Jayden Daniels is about to play defense. No. Nor am I about telling you that secretly Lamar Jackson is about to play defense. No. That's not what I mean. But I do think in this game on Sunday, the game flow is so obscenely important because for all of the tests that the Commanders have passed, they have not in the second half of any game had to deal with, especially defensively, being down. What happens when a team just lines up and tries to ram the football down your throat? What happens when that then exposes you to potential play action shots because you're dedicated to the run because you're trying to be aggressive and get the ball back? What does it mean offensively for Jayden Daniels and company if they no longer feel like they can be quite as balanced? Because I do believe that Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn would stay balanced until you absolutely just have to start kind of chucking it. And you're, the point of the basketball game where you have to shoot threes. But, keep attacking the basket. Stay disciplined. In the football, just run, keep running the football. Keep them honest. But we know that this team would rather be run first and play a lot of the short stuff and then wait for their opportunities to take shots downfield. They don't want to force anything. So what happens if they're in a game flow situation where they're not up or tied in the second half, where they're chasing the game? That is one of the tests outside of the ones that just naturally come with time because, can they continue to adapt week over week? Well, they can't prove that until they do it. But I think in that way, the Lamar Jackson versus Jayden Daniels matchup is far more real this week because they really are trying to push each other into a place they don't want to be. Because, by the way, Lamar Jackson also is as great as he has become as a passer, would much prefer to be in a balanced game flow where he doesn't have to make a ton of throws. He can make big explosive plays. And in many ways, the way that Lamar plays is how Jayden played last week, where it's not the most consistent from the pocket. It's not just, hey, we're going to dink and dunk and operate and drop back all day long in the way that a Joe Burrow or even a Mahomes can do. But he'll find big explosive plays to make up for some of the inaccuracy along the way or some of the misreads, and obviously explosive plays with his arm. He's a good downfield thrower. They have good concepts to take advantage of certain things, and he is the best running quarterback in the sport, however many years he's been in the league running. And so if Lamar feels like he's got to sit back and pass, can he do it? Yeah. Ask the Bengals. That's what he did last week, and they scored ultimately 41. Obviously, some of that coming in overtime, but 38 in regulation. And that Cincinnati defense is fairly awful, but they played better last week than they had previously. But can he do it against a Washington defense that may have found itself a little bit? Like, this is the question. And so I think unlike a lot of times where we have these quarterback marquee matchups and like they're exciting to watch. I'm not trying to diminish that, every time we hype up any of these MVP level guys facing off that we shouldn't get excited. I just think this week with the way that these teams want to play, if one of them can force the issue upon the other one, that becomes a much bigger impact on the outcome than some, I would say, more mature football teams that can win multiple ways or have proven they can win multiple ways, a la, say, the Kansas City Chiefs over the years.
I feel like when we, I guess, preview this game, the headline is Lamar versus Jayden. But I feel as though when we look at the two quarterbacks, I feel as though Lamar, I don't know, I guess where he's come from, we've seen how early in his career he wasn't able to, beat everybody from the pocket. He wasn't able to do that. And I just feel like the trajectory of his career has allowed him to, find ways to, beat us more than one way. He could lean on the run game. He could beat us from the pocket. And I think last week we saw him do just that. They didn't have two safeties over the top. They had one safety over the top and a lot of people in the box trying to stop Derrick Henry. And he proved to everybody that he could, beat it from the pocket. So I think we're just excited to see two playmakers, to be honest, go out there and just, put their best foot forward. I think Jayden, he's shown that, he can lean on the quick game, the run game, but he's also shown that he can, extend the play and, make explosive plays. So
for sure. And maybe he can, but like what happens again when the game flow is a little bit different? Now, I would say the Cincinnati game's the closest we've gotten to something like that, and he needed to make big plays, and he did. He was unbelievable. The chances that he could go 90% again are probably not very good because, again, like that's not a thing you do in the NFL. There's a reason that was a record. And so I'm excited to see how it plays out. I do have a lot of faith in Jayden to live up to the moment. It is going to be really interesting, though, because Washington, obviously, some run defense issues. Baltimore's pass defense is ranked 31st in the league. So there is a lot here. As for the last word on this, before we get to a great conversation with Ben Solak from ESPN coming up at 4:15 and tell you what else we got coming up on the show. Dan Quinn was asked today about the Jayden versus Lamar matchup.
Yeah, they're not playing against each other. Both of them would be great cornerbacks. There's no question about it. But, they're not playing against each other. Both of them are fantastic players and cause all sorts of problems for defensive coaches. But both of them would probably tell you they got to control what they can, and how well they can play and going to do that. So I respect the storyline for you, but at the end of it, man, he's got to absolutely, do his thing and play in the position. And that's what's really cool for us to see, the development at the position. Sometimes that doesn't show up on just a throw. It's checking into, a play against a blitz. It's, checking into a third down play on a screen to Austin to, convert. It's using your legs. And so playing the position and throwing it well, doing all that, that's where, the focus is for him. And I know he has great regard for Lamar, like a lot of us do. But, they're not playing against each other. And so they're playing, their groups against, their respective defenses.
But when that scoreboard is going ching, 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 there is a little bit of that back and forth. There is a little bit of hey, I'm here too. And I think it's well put by Dan. That would be what I was telling him. But that game flow is going to be, what's the score win? It's simply what that means. And obviously, you want to be ahead because then you're ahead, and being ahead is better than being behind. But it changes how the game goes. And that is something that I do think we will be discussing all week long here as we preview, and something that we'll be looking for during the game on Sunday. As for what's coming up on the rest of the show.
Still to come on the Hoffman Show.
Oh, we are getting adventurous. We are getting crazy. We're doing something we've never done before at 5 o'clock. Jason La Canfora is one of the hosts of the afternoon show, Inside Access, up on our sister station 105.7 in Baltimore. We are going to join their show live Beltway crossover event. If you were to flip back and forth in the Odyssey app, it'd sound the exact same for that 15 minutes coming up at 5 o'clock. So the Hoffman Show times Inside Access coming up at 5. But next, even before that, Ben Solak, ESPN, one of the smartest minds, new to ESPN. He was at the Ringer for a long time. I've known Ben for 5+ years, maybe even longer than that. Great football mind. And we're going to talk about how the Commanders have built this up so quickly and how their defense has him thinking that they could really be a contender this year. Solak next. Lockenfora and friends at 5. Clinton Yates at 6:30. We're loaded on a Wednesday, on a competition Wednesday on The Hoffman Show.
The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well in the free Odyssey app. And you can watch us, if you like, on YouTube at the Team 980, where you see next to me on the screen Mr. Ben Solak from ESPN. And Ben, if I had told you, let's say in, I don't know, mid-June-ish, sometime in that range of the offseason, maybe even August, if I had been like, hey, about week 5, week 6, I'm going to text you and be like, hey, you want to come on the show? And you're going to be like, heck yeah, I want to talk about the Washington Commanders. This is one of the most fun teams that I could talk about right now. What kind of drugs do you think I would have been on?
I would have said heck yeah, because Craig Hoffman was asking me to come on the show. Right? It's more about the host and the pals than it is about the. In all seriousness, it is, right? It's a pleasant radio host to talk to, or is this an unpleasant experience? But It is a lot more fun to talk about the Commanders than I thought it would be. Absolutely, yes.
I know the offense is obviously the main driver of the fun. So let's start off with there. But I do want to talk about this defense and how they've turned things around from a pretty bad start, one of the worst TVOAs ever through the first couple weeks of the season, to being really good, even though it's been against some questionable, too, in the Cleveland's case, historically bad offenses the last couple of weeks. But Cliff Kingsbury is doing some things that I think people didn't necessarily expect. And I also think the thing that I'm curious to talk to you about, because you study this stuff from the X's and O's level, you talk to coaches, and I feel like when I listen to you, you have certain things that you really believe about football in a way that I appreciate. Like you have a philosophy. How is Cliff accomplishing some of the things that fit the philosophy, maybe in different ways than other coaches have gone about it successfully in the last couple of years?
Yeah. So Cliff is a college coach who came to the NFL. And it is important to understand that DNA, because there's stuff that NFL coaches, guys who've been in the incubator for 2 decades, 3 decades, are not willing to do that Cliff is willing to do. Right. And we see this whenever a college coach comes. You think about the Chip Kelly era and kind of that, the way that spread system worked and that no huddle worked. Like Cliff's running more bubble screens, more throws behind line of scrimmage than any other team in the league. Jayden Daniels is scrambling more than any other quarterback in the league. They're running hurry up, no huddle more than any other team in the league. They're running RPOs, which RPO charting like kind of sucks. But from my eye, they're running RPOs more than anybody else in the league. Right. NFL coaches aren't willing to do this as much because it's simple and it's kind of, it can get solved on the chalkboard and it doesn't actually give your quarterback progressions. And so if the defense is in the right alignment, then you're kind of screwed and you can't get to like a backside this. And like, there's a big philosophical debate about like, can you be doing this? Should you be doing this? How long does this last? And, Cliff was the head coach in Arizona for 4 years and he had some really nice stretches on offense. And then usually the Jenga tower came tumbling down at some point. Right. So it is objectively very hard to be a college inspired coach. Right. And I know like Cam Taylor Britt said, oh, it's a college offense. And we had to do a whole college offense a pejorative thing for like a week. It just is like, there's no value statement for me on that. Like as an Eagles fan, I love the Chip Kelly era. As a fan of football, I love like RPOs and quarterback read option stuff getting involved in the NFL, but it is objectively a college offense. Like that's Cliff's background. That's the inspiration. So how long can Cliff make this last? Well, that depends on like, his ability to innovate and his ability to stay ahead of opposing defensive coordinators. This year, they're doing more pro-style-y stuff. I use that term like very, very loosely because again, like college has this pejorative and pro doesn't. But they're like running more condensed formations. They're not nearly as spread out as they used to be in Arizona. If you look at like general formation width, they're doing a lot less like 4 open, 4 wide stuff. Like, oh, Cliff's an air raid guy. Well, they're not doing as many air raid formations as they used to. Like, the 4 wide stuff with no tight end, just a back in the core of the formation. No, they're running multiple tight ends at a higher rate than he ever did at Arizona. Their formations are generally tighter. It allows them to be a lot more variable in the running game, right? So Cliff's absolutely like evolving and he's starting to graft more and more pro style stuff into what they're doing, into what the base of this offense is, which again, the base is a college offense. How long does that last? How is that sustainable? Is this going to work in the NFL the way that we typically haven't seen college offenses work? Ask me in 3 months and then I'll let you know,
Right. If you were a defensive coordinator trying to put the clamps on it though, because that's the thing right now. And I was talking to a player in the locker room after the Cleveland game and he was just like, we're kind of doing everything well right now. It's like the screen game is good. The running game is good. The deep passing game is good. When they do go and drop back, like it's been good. So the fact that they are doing everything well, that if you dedicate resources one place, they have the counters available to them.
Right.
Is that any different than the good stretches that he had in Arizona that teams were eventually able to figure out? Is this something that only works if the quarterback stays on a hot streak forever?
Yeah.
Or is there something that is more sustainable that comes out of the way they're using formations, the way they're using personnel, that insulates it a little bit more than some of the problems he ran into later in seasons in Arizona?
Yeah, so this Cleveland game, I think, is a really good example because they put 34 points on the board, right? Now, if you look from a success rate perspective, right, just in terms of like generally how did the offense perform, one of their worst outings of the season. Not a good outing. I think it was 38.5% success rate or something like that. I might be wrong on that number.
Yeah. And just so the audience knows, success rate isn't a subjective thing. It's an objective stat that says based off the down and distance, did you reach a certain threshold that the people who created the stat said this is a successful play on said down and distance.
Yeah, the typical way it gets defined is right, like 5 yards on 1st and 10, right? Half of the yards on second down, right? All of the yards on third down. It's kind of basically saying, hey, an 8-yard gain is a lot more valuable on 3rd and 7 than it is on 3rd and 16, right? It's pretty much what we're trying to say. Right. And that's because, right, they had all these big explosives, a huge Jayden Daniels scramble, huge Jimmy Brown touchdown, huge Terry McLaurin catch. peppered inside a game that was a lot of run for 1 yards, run for -1 yards, right? But tag behind line of scrimmage, right? Quick throw to Zach Ertz that gets dropped and broken up or whatever. And I think you saw Cleveland have that success because Cleveland was willing to play extremely fast and up near the line of scrimmage, right? And that's something that Cleveland personnel-wise is built to do. In the running game, that allows you to, we're going to shoot some gaps, right? If this team wants to pull 6 guys and everything, have Austin Eckler going this way and 2 tight ends going that way and Jay running this way. Okay, we're just going to blitz it, right? We're just going to go really fast to the mesh point. We're going to try to screw with the timing of all this and just be very disruptive. That gives up some big runs. Think about Austin Eckler, a big, long, explosive run, but it also gets some tackles at or behind line of scrimmage, which is big for a defense. And then passing game wise, what that allows you to do, right, is you're very tight to Zach Ertz, you're very tight to Luke McCaffrey, you're really challenging some of these underneath throws, you're getting incompletions, you're forcing 2nd and 10s. The cost of doing business is, talk about the explosive runs, talk about the isolation throw to De'Ami Brown, you're going to leave yourself in some one-on-ones. As long as Jayden continues to be like really one of the best vertical throwers we've seen through 5 weeks of the season, they're going to continue to be able to score fast and score explosives. It might be herky-jerky the way it was against the Browns. We have some 3-and-out drives. Some drives are going backwards, all of a sudden 60-yard gain. But as long as Jayden can drop that ball in a bucket to De'Ami, unbelievable throw to Terry on the moves. Best throw I've ever seen from Jayden, college or pro. As long as we continue doing that, like they're going to be able to at least put explosives on the board, score fast, and like keep pace with top teams. I'd be concerned about the down-to-down success, right? The kind of the in-structure success of the offense, if they continue to struggle with these defenses that are willing to get really tight to line of scrimmage and kind of shove it in their face a little bit, right? Get aggressive, kind of blitz the mesh point and try to get some tackles for loss.
Right. But in a league that's built on explosives, if you're going to expose yourself to explosives against Jayden Daniels, it seems like that is... Yeah, that you're like the best option is to play with fire and hope you don't get burned, and that's not exactly sound parenting advice, if you will. Ben Solak, ESPN, with us here on the Hoffman Show. The other thing I wanted to ask you about real quick is someone who's studied quarterbacks like you have, and I think of guys like Stroud, obviously, who had such a fantastic rookie season. The thing that's blown me away about Jayden is how much he's improved week over week. And sometimes it feels like drive over drive, the ability to not make the same mistake twice. Can you remember anybody else or a certain small other group of guys who showed this kind of progression this quickly, fixing what were perceived as holes in their game?
That's a good question. Not really. I think, and I think a huge part of that credit goes to Jayden. I do want to not understate the part of that credit goes to Cliff, right? As I was a guy who was critical of Cliff for a lot of his time in Arizona. I did not like the hire for Washington. I think he's largely making me shut up. But one of the things that Cliff's always had is Cliff is really, really good at getting his quarterback to see it. Right. And he was a quarterback's coach, right? When he was, before he was a head coach at Texas Tech. And then in his time between Arizona and Washington, he was there with Caleb Williams. Cliff's very, very good at getting his quarterback to understand what it is that Cliff wants from this, right? He is a good teacher, a good communicator of, okay, if we get X, do Y, if we get Y, do Z. And then Cliff's also very comfortable telling his quarterback, and if you don't like it, tuck it, run, and like, we'll get to another down. Right. And so I think Cliff is a really good guy to have in Jayden's ear, because I think there's a lot of quarterback coaches and offensive coordinators in the league right now who would see Jayden scrambling as much as Jayden scrambling. And Jayden will tuck and run when there's open receivers downfield and would get like upset about that and want to fix that. And Cliff's just very happy living with that, right? He doesn't mind picking up yardage that way. And so I think Cliff is a big part of why you're seeing Jayden. Yeah, Jayden's eyes are good and he's seeing things fast and he's not replicating the same mistakes, repeating the same mistakes over and over. I think Cliff's a big part of that. And then I also think Jayden's a big part of that. But you ask do guys develop like this? The answer is no. And I think that, one, that's great news because it's awesome. I think also, two, it's kind of bad news because there are some bad Jayden games coming down the stretch. And I don't say that for any other reason besides this is the NFL and it's very hard, right? There's kind of there's two realities right now for Washington fans. One, Jayden's the best rookie quarterback of all time. Or two, there's going to be some bumps in this road, right? And like, unfortunately, one is just remarkably more likely than the other. And so I think you're going to see some games where the interception numbers go up, right? Because the downfield completion numbers go down. This offense gets stuck in the mud a little bit more. The running game doesn't work as well. They have to deal with a lot of third and drop back. They have to deal with some more pass protection the way that this line's been performing well, but I'm not sure it's the best in like drop back pass protection. And they're going to have some bad games. I think it's going to get herky jerky. If you can continue to ride those waves, now we've got a guy who really has his head screwed on straight, can develop well. That's the makings of a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, how he handles that is everything. And that dude, the thing that I think has changed specifically about that position, that like anytime I talk about about, I mean, hopefully if I'm here, I won't have to talk about quarterbacks in a draft for 10 years.
Right.
But, the thing that I will look at in future drafts much more is like, I want to know about guys' work habits. I want to know about the mentality and kind of everything up here in a way that I always knew was really important, but just see how he does it. And you're like, oh, I get it now. Like, it's just, there's a prerequisite of like getting there at 4 a.m. that your ceiling or your floor then becomes like Alex Smith, and your ceiling is what we're seeing with Jayden right now when you work like that and your process is good. Defensively, though, they started really poor and have turned things around. And I know that you're impressed by some of the things that they've been able to find. What is it that you see that makes you believe that it's not just, hey, Kyler had a bad day, and when Kyler has a bad day, they're really bad, and Cleveland's one of the worst offenses we've ever seen, that there's actually improvement on the Washington side of it?
I think that, right, they have a few peak players, especially in the front seven. I think like John Allen and Jerome Payne, I think everybody knows about. Frankie Louv has been lights out, dude. Frankie, man, I was worried about the transition out of like, oh, we're a 3-4 team. We had the spot for this like outside linebacker, off-ball linebacker hybrid. Frankie Louv, like that's what he was in Carolina. Go to Washington, it's Dan Quinn, and you're just like, all right, like, so you can be a full-time edge rusher, you can be a full-time off-ball backer. Like, that's never been Frankie's game. I kind of don't know how this is going to work. Frankie's been excellent for them. He's been unbelievable off-ball. Looks delightful. And so, like, those three guys are creating enough splash plays for them that they get opportunities ahead of the sticks to get off of the field, right? Like, Washington's defense is still, like, absolute last in the league and, like, explosive run rate surrendered. But they're also, like, up there in terms of, like, tackle for loss and stuffs, right? So it's kind of, you're living with a double-edged sword there. It's okay. Sometimes we give up these big runs. We give up these chunk gains, and they're putting points on the board. Sometimes you can get to 2nd and 12. Sometimes you can get to 3rd and 9. And then let's see if we can win that down. I think that the changes at corner have been good for them, right? I don't think Mikey Sanderson is the best outside corner in the league. I don't think that's the best spot for him. I don't think Noah Igbenogany is the best slot corner in the league. But like, I think it's kind of better than some of the guys they had out there previously and the targets that were on their backs, right, in terms of opposing offenses. So I think that's given you a little bit of breathing room. Quan and Chin are playing well, playing fast. They're hitting their big guys, right? And that's like really nice to have in this defense where you're asking those guys to make a lot of tackles in space. So they have enough splash players, especially in the front seven, that they're getting penetration, they're getting stops, they're able to get off the field often enough that this offense can kind of get a lead built because they're scoring on every single freaking drive. And then all of a sudden, the opposing team's in pass, and now you can just rush the passer, Dan Quinn, go crazy. I'm really interested to see what happens in a game for this defense where the script isn't as nice, right? They're not nursing a multi-score lead for the entire second half, which has been the case for most of the Bengals game, all of the Cardinals game, and then all of the Browns game. That's kind of where we've seen the improvement kind of come over the last few weeks. And I think Baltimore is a good test for that, right? Where I think even if this offense is producing well against Baltimore, Baltimore's going to slow the game down, right? Because they're going to run the football a lot. They're going to eat some clock. I don't think you're going to see them, down 17 to the Commanders at halftime. And I think it's going to put more stress on this defense over the course of 4 quarters. So excited to see it.
So let's talk about this Baltimore game real quick. Ben Solak, ESPN, with us. And I think the full range of outcomes is on the table. I would say blowout either way is less likely than close game. If I had to pick one blowout, I'd probably pick Baltimore still. Sorry, Commanders fans. But I picked Baltimore blowing out Washington. They just could play at an intensity that Washington hasn't experienced yet, and Baltimore's playoff tested, et cetera, et cetera. But I do look at the 31st ranked pass defense for Baltimore and go, I don't know, this Washington pass offense pretty darn good. They're the best scoring team in the league so far. So I guess it is possible. What matchup or, part phases of the game going against each other do you think is or are the ultimate determinants in the Washington-Baltimore matchup? Yeah,
I think the best thing that Commanders have done through the first 5 weeks has just been really, really good in the handoff game and the read option game, just running the football, right? Stay ahead of the sticks, get you to your RPO game, get you to your play action pass game, and then Jayden hits his explosives. The Ravens are a pass funnel defense. They see more dropbacks over expectation than any defense in the league because this run defense is really, really, really good. So the first thing to find out is, okay, where are you going to find your easy buckets on 1st and 10, right? I think it's going to be a lot fewer, not a lot, but significantly fewer Brian Robinson runs and Austin Eckler runs, and a lot more Luke McCaffrey screens and Terry McLaurin screens and De'Ami Brown screens, and trying to find ways to just keep the base offense moving, right? Convert the first down and kind of get your sea legs under you. So that tackling game that you're going to have there on the boundary is going to be a big deal. If they can run the football in Baltimore, go for it. It's just nobody really has been able to do that yet. If that puts you, if you're in a bad spot now, if you're facing more 3rd and longs and whatever, it becomes a really important game for the non-Terry McLaurin wide receivers, because Baltimore has just like they'll leave Brandon Stevens on an island on the outside. Now they have rookie corner Nate Wiggins, who's actually looked pretty good through the first couple of weeks that he's back from injury, but they'll leave him alone on the outside. They'll leave Marlon Humphrey in the slot, and they'll basically just say, like, hey, pick your matchup and see if you can beat one of our guys. And like, Stevens is not the strongest guy at the catch point. Wiggins is a rookie. Marlon's pretty good in the slot. But like, this is the sort of game where you'd like to be able to look at De'Ami Brown, look at Olamide Zaccheaus, and say, like, hey, you got to go get us a bucket on 3rd and 8. And the Commanders have been very surprisingly good at that. I feel like they're Luke McCaffrey's and De'Ami's of the world. Of the things that I'm suspicious of this Commanders team, that's pretty high up there, where I'm looking at these receivers like, okay, like, there's a 3rd round rookie. This is De'Ami was kind of like viewed as a bust and like not necessarily making room. Olamide Zaccheaus was like a low tier free agent. How are these guys finding so much success right now in the passing game? So it's going to be important for those guys, I think, to win on your late down. So it's an important game for Cliff in terms of scheming up the easy yardage. And then it's going to be a very important game for those alternate receivers, those second receivers, besides Terry, winning their one-on-one matchups. Jayden scrambling is not going to save you in this game because Baltimore is extremely disciplined on defense against scrambling quarterbacks, right? This team plays Lamar exclusively for like 2 months in the summer, all right? They care very, very deeply about rushing the quarterback intelligently, keeping him in the pocket, right? Don't, like, you saw the Browns fly at Jayden and just like Jayden would just go out the back door and now there's 3 Browns on the ground. There's so much space downfield. Baltimore's not going to give you that. So Jayden scrambling is not going to save you as much as you want in this game. So you have to be better kind of on script a little bit. That's going to be the matchup there.
And then when you flip the field, can Washington, like, they've been better against the run. They're also very susceptible to very specific runs, some of these traps and whams and pulling, pin pull type of stuff. And Cleveland just didn't run them, which thanks, Kevin Stefanski. Yeah. Appreciate you for that one. How do you think that they can do enough against Lamar and Henry in the running game to kind of do what Cincinnati tried and make Lamar have back-to-back, like, hey, we'll beat you with big explosive passing play type of games?
Right, yeah. So this Baltimore team has had 38 straight games of rushing for 100 yards. The first team in I want to say, almost 20 years now to have 1,000 rushing yards through the first 5 weeks and average 6 yards per carry. You're not going to stop the running game. What's important is to not let the 10-yard runs become 50-yard runs, specifically with Derrick Henry, right? You can't let him get to that 3rd level and get some steam. Like I said, Quan and Chin are big safeties. Nobody's big when it comes to tackling Derrick Henry when he's got momentum. And so you really have to be able to, kind of batter him and slow him down and gang tackle him there in the 2nd level. Don't let him break to the 3rd level. So firstly, just don't give up the game-winning run that he had against the Bengals. Don't give up the first run that he had against the Bills. You cannot let the choo-choo train get moving in the 3rd level. So if that's what you do in the box, right, you really try to just like, you're going to have to live with 5-yard runs, just trying to let them be 15, 20, 50, 75. And then in the passing game, like, the Ravens have been pretty good this year. Lamar's playing excellent football, throwing the football, but like, 1 week they're a Zay Flowers team, the next week they're an Isaiah Likely team, the following week they're a Justice Hill team. They're kind of very designery in the passing game. They kind of get to one matchup that they like and they try to hammer it as best they can. They're not very versatile. They're not great going through their progressions. It's usually Lamar getting outside the pocket and then creating the scramble drill. And so you have to figure out where they're going to pressure point you. I think it's going to be a Justice Hill sort of a day, throwing the ball to the back, kind of a lot of this, take advantage of the aggressiveness of that front and then go misdirection and kind of get the ball out early. And so you have to be able to tackle really well in space. You have to be able to adjust to that when you see it on the fly. Like, Monken is usually really good in the first quarter, and then you can catch up to him in the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th. And so it's a big Dan Quinn day for figuring out what's going on.
That's going to be definitely interesting to watch. And then last but not least, and sorry, we're gonna make this a little short because of time here, Ben, but we want people to read the article anyway. You did a proposed trades column for ESPN.com. I believe you had a Commanders proposed trade. What's the short version of that we can send people to the internet to read if they want the long version?
Yeah, well, I think that this team, it's funny, they were the biggest sellers last year because this team was nowhere. The second you get a Jayden Daniels in the building, you're like, all right, we have a 4 or 5 year rookie window, let's go. And you become the biggest buyers in the world, right? Like, in a heartbeat. I have them adding T. Higgins. I think the Bengals are going to be in a spot where they might have to blow it up by the end of this month. And just right now you have no kind of ball winner on the outside. Like, Terry's unbelievable. I love Terry to death, but Terry's like not the biggest guy, not like, win above the rim sort of a dude. And if you add a T. Higgins to this team, like, and you have the ability to play him outside, you get to move Terry into the slot a little bit more. You kind of bump. You don't have to ask Olamide and De'Ami and Noah Brown to do as much they've been doing so far for you this year. I think that this team construction starts to look a lot more viable. And so I have them trading for T. I think they should be on every single, like, Devontae talks, they should be there. Amari Cooper talks, they should be there. Just if the price is right, the best guy for them is T. He's a little bit younger, and I think he fits best, but this team should add a receiver for sure.
Yeah, no, it's so tempting. I also am just like, I want to give Adam Peters every draft pick possible to let him just draft dudes. Don't get impatient. But Man,
It's
the
a
price
great
is right.
idea. It's a lovely idea, but what the clock is ticking already on the rookie window.
On the rookie.
And you know,
totally.
if you know for sure a guy is good in the NFL, that certainty is very important at this stage in your team building. And so absolutely keep some picks, but you want to spend a second round pick on some guy from Michigan who might be a good pass catcher? You want to spend on T. Higgins? I know what I want to do.
I totally get that line of thinking as well. Ben Solak, you can do his work, ESPN.com, frequent guest on many of the ESPN's podcasts as well. Mina and the whole crew over there. Catch him on TV. He's a big superstar now. Ben, appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
It's the Hoffman Show on Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And Anthony's doing something important right now. So once he's done with that, I have a request for Anthony. And then I have an announcement to make. But there's a lot going on. So we need to make sure that we're ready for 12 minutes from now, when Jason Lockenfora and friends from the Inside Access show on 105.7 The Fan, their afternoon show, their Hoffman show, except for they have 3 people, and thus it's not named after anybody. But Inside Access, the afternoon show on 105.7 in Baltimore, we are going to be live on both stations, the first ever Beltway crossover with the biggest game of the NFL weekend coming. So that is coming up at 5 o'clock. Competition Wednesday. I'll tell you this right now, the wheel of mediocre punishment is on my side of proceedings. It's in my studio, not Anthony's. And I think I'm very scared it's going to stay here. So we'll pick some more games. I will spin the wheel. We will determine what my punishment is. I really hope I don't have to do 100 push-ups again. Honestly, if I have to do 100 push-ups again, I might just reject it and to be like, at the very least, I'll do them tomorrow. But we're gonna figure that out. Coming up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, you will hear from Jayden Daniels and Dan Quinn in our Pick 6. And then coming up at 6:30, Clinton Yates joins us for his Wednesday visit. Okay, Anthony, the request I have for you, sir, is I know Mitch Tischler is not secretly coming back, but I would like the air horns if they are easily accessible, because we have a big announcement to make about the show tomorrow, and I believe it is air horns worthy. And if we're stealing Tischler's air horns, it must be a pretty big announcement.
Okay, give me 2 seconds.
Okay, in 2 seconds, Anthony will have the air, not the practice horn, Anthony, not the brrr, practice is over, not
sure
that
you don't
one.
want those?
I mean, if you have it, just a.
Nah, I won't give you those.
Okay. It is going to be after practice tomorrow, if that's a hint to anybody. After practice, after the practice horn blows. Air horns, please. Commanders receiver De'Ami Brown is going to join us. So that is 4 o'clock. Oh, more air horns. You know what else I think it deserves?
Did you put the LeBron James scream on there?
No. Is it in the system for me to put on there?
I can't put it on your board.
No, I know, but is it in white orbit?
Maybe not.
Oh, if it's not in the system, I can't put something that's not in the pool of available selections. It's like drafting someone who's not draft eligible.
Yeah.
Can you please make the LeBron scream draft eligible?
I got you.
De'Ami Brown, tomorrow, 4 o'clock. Very excited about that. He really worked his butt off in this offseason and has been working really hard. So to see him start to have some of that payoff, I am excited to talk to De'Ami. So that will be tomorrow, 4 p.m. here on the Team 980. As for right now, a little bit more on Jayden Daniels and getting ready for this game for the Commanders against the Ravens. And it was funny. You heard Solak talk about, hey, this team practices exclusively against Lamar Jackson for a couple of months every summer in training camp. So you'd think that they would be prepared for, what Jayden can do. So what are the similarities between Jayden and Lamar? Dan Quinn asked about that today.
I would say, if I had to pick one, that both of these two are elite competitors, like at the highest level. And that shows on the tape, the way they extend plays, the way they finish, the way they lead their group. So that's the part, if I was to make a comparison, it would be something intangible like that. Both of them have their own unique ways about them. But in this game, all these guys are fantastic competitors. And then, like in most profession, there's the elite, and these two guys are elite at it.
No doubt about it. The absolute, never say die attitude, never give up on a play, it matters at the quarterback position. And especially when you have their skill sets where, there's the touchdown that Lamar throws to Likely in the Cincy game where it looks like he's running out of bounds. And in the last second, he sees Likely in the end zone. He's just like, boop, back across. Jayden, the 3rd and 13, same thing. Let me just roll out here. Oh, Terry's open down the field. Let's launch one 56 yards. It's the best throw that arguably he's ever made in his life. He never had a 50-plus air yard pass in college. Now he's got 2 in 3 weeks, one against Cincinnati on Monday Night Football, and then the other one to Terry the other day against Cleveland. And so that competitive nature from the scrambles to the throws to the late throws, late and downs, the refusal to go down in the pocket, all that stuff adds up. So how do you deal with a guy like that? This is Dan Quinn's short-ish answer on dealing with Lamar Jackson.
It does a lot. And I had this conversation yesterday with somebody. When you can extend the plays, that obviously, changes how you go about things. And so some quarterbacks need extra, people for spy. Sometimes you want to have zone where there's vision to go. And it's the second play usually that can be the most challenging. A first play may begin as a pass, and then as the second one begins, outside the pocket. And he has just had remarkable, success, with his arm and with his legs. And so, yeah, he is absolutely a threat.
One thing that I have noticed about the Commanders' defense is I don't know that they're going to use a ton of direct spies. I mean, Lamar's his own unique guy, so maybe against him you do it. The problem with the spy is it takes a player out of both the coverage structure and the rush. So you're shorthanded on the rush because you don't have maximal players rushing because one's spying. But that's a sacrifice you're willing to make if it gives you an extra body in coverage. Well, instead, that guy's not in coverage. He's just standing there waiting on the quarterback, who, by the way, might be fast enough to outrun him to the perimeter anyway. What the Commanders have done well so far this year is in situations where plays get extended, they've got guys that will fire down and meet the quarterback. So last week, there's a play where Deshaun Watson is rolling to his right, extending the play, and Percy Butler, who was roaming the middle of the field, was like, well, I don't really do a whole lot of good here anymore. He's not going to throw back across his body to the middle of the field as he rolls away from it. And so he, at 4.3 speed, just fires down into the box, and he winds up getting, I think he gets like a shove on Watson, but he forces a throw. And so I think that, playing zone, keeping eyes on the quarterback, having the bodies where you want them, not being shorthanded in coverage or in your rush is definitively the better plan. Now, certain situations, would you put Luvu? Would you put Shin? Would you put Butler? Would you put Bobby Wagner, who's just brain-wise, like able to see lanes and angles and all that stuff really well? As a spy, it's definitely a possibility. We'll talk about this matchup much more next here on the Team 980. We cross over, our first ever live crossover with 105.7 The Fan in Baltimore. So both shows live next.
special treat for you. It's Inside Access. Ken Wyman, Jason Lockett-Fora, and Tim Barbalace.
And it's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 in D.C., our first ever live Beltway crossover. 2 stations, 1 conversation about the game of the NFL weekend.
So let's start with that. This Lamar Jackson versus Jayden Daniels. Surprisingly, Craig, the Commanders, they come into this game with the better record. How the heck did your football team have a rookie QB go 4-1?
Turns out starting 55 games in college, not really having to go into class your senior year a whole lot because you're a fifth-year senior who's graduated. Turns out you can be pretty good as a rookie. Historically great, even. This Jayden Daniels kid, pretty good, guys. I don't know if that's made its way up the Beltway.
Oh, no, it definitely has. He's done a great job of covering up, I think, a defense that probably has a fair number of warts. And here they are this week facing an offense that's as potent running and passing the ball as Washington's. What is the level of concern with the talent on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I would say it's a lot less than it was 3 weeks ago. They've played a lot better the last couple of weeks. I mean, as you guys well know in the division, the Browns are an absolute affront to football. So obviously we're seeing a defense play against them last week that you're like, how much of this is Cleveland, how much of this is Washington? But they're a lot tighter in their blitzes. They're a lot stickier in coverage. I'm curious, to me, the game flow in this one is so interesting. Can Washington shut down Baltimore's run game, or at least slow it enough that Jayden can keep up? Obviously they haven't had to chase a game all year, and so to me, that's the big thing in this one is how does Washington's defense play against Baltimore's run game, and do they follow a similar model as Cincinnati? I would assume they do something like that. If they do, what's your confidence level in Lamar to put on a similar explosive type performance in the air that he did last week, or do you think that they'll just be able to run it anyway?
I mean, I think that they'll have success on the ground with
I think they can pick and choose.
Yeah, because with the Commanders giving up 5.1 yards per carry, and they really haven't been tested a ton on the ground because they're scoring so many points, highest scoring offense in football. I think Derrick Henry could have a good game.
Yeah, no, that scares the bejesus out of me. Is does Henry have 200 yards? And it's weird because they've given up a ton of explosives, but they also have a decently high stuff rate. So they'll give up a 30-yarder and then -2, and all of a sudden you're in 2nd and 12, and you might be on the edge of field goal range, but 2nd and 12 isn't where you want to live. And then I think the other part of that is the Baltimore pass defense, we all know they're ranked 31st in the league. Is that an actual concern, or is that nature of they've been up in some games and teams are trying to hit them?
They just brought Dean Pease back to be a consultant.
Brought him out of retirement for the 4th time.
It's a concern.
And look, we were talking all offseason about the potential of this secondary, the back end, because they did historic things with this defense last year. Number 1 in the league in takeaways, sacks, points per game, but they've been getting up a ton of explosive plays through the air.
Is that something that is that a personnel issue, some of the guys that left, or is that they're still trying to figure out the Mike McDonald replacement?
There you go.
Yeah, the brain, not only McDonald, but Denar Wilson's defensive coordinator in Tennessee now, Anthony Weaver's defensive coordinator in Miami. We like to call it a brain drain that has occurred. And Zach Orr, he could be great at some point, but what's he, 34 years old? First 32? Time he's ever called 32. First time he's called plays.
I mean, it worked for McDonald.
It did not right away.
The first 8 games. Not till they got Roquan Smith.
Yeah, go look at that Miami game, year 1 for Mike McDonald.
The Buffalo game,
Fair enough. I know Roquan's been I've heard his name bantied about in terms of struggling a little bit more this year. Is that I guess the question I'm trying to get at is okay, the pass ranking we know is bad. They're 31st in the league. There's only 32 teams. As someone who hosts a radio show here in Washington, I'm very familiar with that part of defensive and offensive rankings, frankly. But is it the back end? Is it a lack of pressure? Is it those two things not marrying up? If you're Cliff Kingsbury going into this week, what is the thing that you were trying to exploit that so many others have?
Well, the middle of the field has been open for business against this Ravens team. They've given up some of the most passing yards over the middle of the field, but also the most air yards. I mean, deep plays, there's been a lot of miscommunication on that side. I mean, Roquan, is he being asked to do too much in this defense? Obviously, Patrick Queen not here from last year. Trenton Simpson's a young player that's kind of been exposed a little bit here. I think it's a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, there's not any one thing, right? Like, they've allowed 19 completions on 24 passes between the hash marks. They allowed 35 all of last season. Struggle to cover backs on little wheel routes and checkdowns. Like, it could be a day for Robinson to do some of that. They've given up a ton of yards downfield, outside the numbers on balls that are 25 yards or deeper through the air. They've had communication breakdowns where not everybody understands exactly what the assignment is and what coverage they're in, and that's given, free runners to Xavier Worthy for a walk-in touchdown. Last week, they couldn't defend a bubble screen when they blitzed against Joe Burrow, and he is Joe Burrow, and Jamar Chase goes 70 yards on a screen. Like, they give 170 yards of yak last week. Like, tackling is also an issue. Like, it's really all
everything.
the above. It's really all the above. From your standpoint, because you mentioned pass rush, and Kyle Van Noy went off for 3 weeks, but the edge rushers outside of him haven't been consistent. Matabike will wreck a game from inside. Have you guys done a 180 on your offensive line? Like, how good do you think that 5-man unit is, and how much of this is the combination of a unicorn quarterback and Kingsbury's scheme and a 3-headed rushing monster?
Well, I chuckle, Jason, because it is, I have not done 180, but a lot of people have, because I was screaming to anyone who would listen last year that this line, personnel-wise, was not nearly as bad as the statistics were, and that you had an offensive coordinator who was committing malpractice weekly with a young quarterback who was not very good at diagnosing pressure and understanding where the ball needed to go. Now you have a young quarterback who absolutely is phenomenal at that. He's getting the ball out incredibly quick, combined with a play caller who both is calling plays in a way that makes rushing difficult and is insulating an offensive line when he does need to drop back and pass. And they're only doing that, 5 to 10 times a game, true drop back versus screens and RPOs and all these other things, where they're not afraid to use chip help. Like, they're not going to put Jayden Daniels back behind exposed 5-man protections, and they're make sure they're not easily manipulated. Like, if you want to understand how to easily manipulate protection, go watch what the Washington defense did to the Cleveland Browns last week. Their protection plan, to call it a plan is insulting to plans. Like, it's so easy. There was a play in the first quarter last week where they blitzed. It was a simulated pressure. So they send 4 guys against a 5-man protection. And the way Cleveland's got it set up, they slide away from the blitz. And so 4 on 5, they cut Dorrance Armstrong, a defensive end, completely loose. So Cliff Kingsbury, he doesn't do stuff like that. They make sure we're chipping Myles Garrett, for instance, last week. They will chip and send help, and their backs do a great job in pass pro blocking, specifically Jeremy McNichols, their third back, who's come in and had a couple of big ones, and then Austin Eckler has been just outrageously good at everything this year. An incredible bounce back year for him. So I think it's a combination of the things, which if you pay attention league-wide, as I know you guys do, like, that's how it is for everyone. Sacks are a quarterback stat, not an offensive line stat. This line can do certain things really well. They move well. They run block well. So asking them to drop back pass block is a recipe for a disaster, so they just don't do it.
Doing a crosstalk here, 105.7 The Fan and 980 in D.C. I'm curious, where are the fans on this, Craig? Have they fully bought in any PTSD because of the RG3 situation from years ago where he looked great for a few weeks and then Haloti Ngata kind of leg whips him and he's never the same? Like, have the fans totally bought in? And obviously the last year for you guys, for Commanders fans, new ownership, the stink of Dan Snyder finally gone. Where are the fans in all this?
Yeah, I would say it's yes to all of the above. There is still a little bit of apprehension, but this is the most significant speed bump left, if you will, on that road. I think here fans believe if we can compete, I'll use we just for simplicity of language. Please don't take away my journalism degrees here. If we can compete with you guys, if we can compete with the Baltimore Ravens, a model of consistency, a model of really, frankly, excellence over the last 2 decades of the NFL, then that means we can really think about being in that class. That, wow, the ownership change really did make that much of a difference. Wow, we might have our guy at quarterback in the same way that you have yours in Lamar, even if it hasn't ended in Lombardi's yet. Like, he's a 2-time MVP. That's what you want. You want to be in that mix. And I think people still look at what happened with Robert. I will tell anyone that will listen, like, they are two completely different humans, and that is going to make all of the difference. But he's a mobile quarterback who runs around, and it's very exciting. And this feels a little familiar. And then I do think that, people are starting to understand the difference in the ownership. And I'll tell you a very quick story in your audience. A couple weeks ago, after they won against Cincinnati on Monday night, the Commanders went straight to Arizona and set up shop in Arizona for the entire week, something that had to cost, I don't even know, thousands, hundreds of thousands. I don't know if that cost $1 million to move a football operation across the country for an entire week. Like, all their equipment, hotel rooms for everybody, 100-plus person staff the whole week. And Josh Harris was like, oh, that you need to do that to win? Sweet, let's do it. And he paid for it. And that kind of stuff, on top of the lack of a horrible place to go to work every day, smarter people being around, those are the kinds of things that are starting to already convince people that it is very different.
Craig, what about the here and now? I mean, could this team end up winning the NFC East?
It's a crappy division.
I think what you just added on at the end is a relevant plot point. I don't think the Eagles are very good. I think they're a mess. I think the Cowboys are questionable at best, and the Giants are the Giants, which means every time you think that they're dead, they go do something silly like beat Seattle, but they're still not any good. So in that regard, and they're already 4-1, like, that's a pretty good starting point. Yeah, they can win the division. It's unheard of to, like, make the Super Bowl with a rookie quarterback, and I still have enough questions about the talent on offense, about defensively, where, can they hold it together against better operations. But I do think that I certainly believe they can compete with anybody on any given Sunday. And I'll wrap things up by asking you guys, like, Baltimore, they obviously sneak a win out. They get the help of a bad snap in overtime and all the other things that go right. But, hey, they won, and ultimately y'all are having a good season up there. And I think we know that if your team is around in the end, like, they're going to be a pain in the butt in the playoffs. But in the here and now, how nervous are Ravens fans about Jayden Daniels coming to town and putting up another 300-yard day and leading all the highlight reels on Sunday night?
Expect to be a shootout.
Yeah, I'm on the over. I mean, that might be chalky in public, but 52.5 ain't scaring me off in this one. No, I think the Ravens win this game for a lot of, obvious reasons, including the institutional knowledge and, them being at home and how early in the program it is there. But I don't know about them covering. I think it's going to be a ball game.
Yeah.
What about you? Who are you predicting to win this thing?
I will probably take Baltimore by the end of it. I have a big question about, like, the intensity, right? Like, the Ravens have played in these kinds of games against Mahomes and against Burrow, and what it means to, like, have Nance and Romo up in the booth and be the game that everyone's watching. That is new for almost everybody here. I do think Jayden Daniels doesn't give anything about that. Like, he's convinced that all the stuff he went through at LSU, Alabama, and all that kind of stuff, like, is just as big. And I don't know that he's wrong on, like, LSU, Alabama on a Sunday night in Baton Rouge. So I think that he doesn't care, but it is a big stage for a lot of these guys. And I wonder if this is a huge learning point for them. And that's the one thing about their loss this year. Dan Quinn came out of that loss against Tampa in week 1, was like, that's fine as long as we learn the lessons. I wonder if this is a lessons game ultimately for Washington, and that later in the season, and, if they're in the playoffs for the next whatever number of years with Daniels, that they look back at this game and be like, that was the game where we learned how to win. But they might lose it this weekend, if that makes sense.
Craig Hoffman, this was fun, man. Thank you so much for doing this. We enjoyed it.
Enjoy the game.
Yeah, Jason, Ken, Tim, great to be with you guys. Appreciate you doing it, and we'll talk to you down the line.
Thanks so much. Hey, coming up next.
All right, coming up next here on the Hoffman Show. That was a blast. Really appreciate those guys doing that live on our sister station up in Baltimore, and, of course, post stations. If you want more Ravens coverage, you can check them out on the free Odyssey app. When we get back here on the Team 980, a little bit more from Dan Quinn, and then the fun ends for me because it's Competition Wednesday, and your boy did not have a good week. Anthony, what did I tell you about playing this song before the end of the show? You can't do this to me. This is a song that belongs at the end of a set.
You want to know why I play this song?
Why is that?
I thoroughly enjoyed the crossover talk between you, Jason, Ken, Tim.
And you want more.
And I wanted more. That's
so
all.
you want an encore.
Yes, please.
Do you want more?
Encore.
Cooking,
Encore. Encore.
with the Beltway boys?
You said what?
No, nothing. That's not happening again. You talk over it. It's lost forever.
That was good, though.
Just over here drinking water. Yeah, no, that was fun. I enjoyed doing that. It's something that we want to do a couple more times this season. It's fun that we get to do it with our Beltway brethren here to get our crossover season started. But I also think, if I'm being honest, Anthony, people are going to do that more with us because it's like sometimes when your team's really good that you cover or really bad, or I should say when your team's really bad, you don't even bother worrying about the opponent. Like, what's the point? Like, at the end of last season, did y'all really care, like, what was going on with the insert team here? No, because you didn't really care that much about the game. It was just another excuse to watch your team get their brains beaten in and figure out how fast that someone was going to get fired. And we kept telling you, like, Rivera's going to make it to the end of the year. He did, and then see ya. And Del Rio didn't make it that far, so that was something. But now, like, these games matter a whole lot. I mean, even next week, the Panthers stink. You know what we're going to do? We'll probably find someone who covers the Panthers because I want to understand what they are and who they are and what they do. And because I want the Commanders to go out and put on a big old 35-burger performance and win, act like a team that belongs in the top conversations around the league.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to see happen. And so in order to do that, we want to understand the opponent. If it's Commanders-Panthers in Week 13 and both teams are 2-10, because they'd played 12 games and then they'd be in Week 13.
That's good math.
Actually, probably 2-9 because it could probably be in bye week by then.
Well, you used to have late bye, so.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So this year, I think they have a Week 13 bye. The point is, we probably wouldn't have a Carolina expert on because they would stink and we would stink. But now, all these teams are going to be like, hey, even if their team's bad, they're going to be like, hey, you were bad last year. How'd you get good? I want that as a science experiment for my team. So I think as we go through the schedule for the rest of the year, let's pull it up. I got it in my head for at least a couple of weeks here. But obviously, we just talked to our friends, our friends in Baltimore. So fine. I've already been asked to come on a Panthers show next week. So I'm excited for that. My guy, Anish Shroff, it's like their team official show because he's their play-by-play guy, and he asked me to do something, so I'm excited for that. So I've already gotten requests, and if not, more coming from Charlotte. Chicago, I'm sad that my guy, Danny Parkins, I'm going to have to find someone else to talk to because Danny's doing Breakfast Ball on Fox Sports 1 now. Big, silly superstar, making TV money. Good for him. But I'm sure that we'll have a crossover with our friends at 670 The Score. WFAN, they live in their own little bubble up in New York, so we probably won't do anything with the Giants folks. But maybe Tiki Barber will want to talk. That's who does afternoons up there. We know their producer. We'll probably, if they don't want to do something live, then maybe we'll just have Sean on because he's hilarious.
Yeah.
So there's that. I would say there's a near 100% chance that we do something, whether it's live or whether we just have our guy Andrew Filipponi on from Pittsburgh. Love Pony. Again, Philly, maybe. Depends on what kind of mood they're in. As long as no one throws a battery at me. Just kidding. I love you, Philadelphia. You have great sandwiches. Dallas, yeah, we'll probably do something with that. Our pals down in Dallas.
Dallas is fun, man.
Yeah. They also have the show that's on 105.3, G-Bag Nation, our show. I used to know those guys or some of those guys because there's like 7 dudes on that show. That does feel a bit something or a bit uneven. It's going to have to be me representing the district, and then they got like 17 people on that afternoon show.
So you feel like you're getting jumped, sort of, kind of?
I wouldn't say jump, but it's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. A lot of people.
Maybe we'll just tape something with them or have like Sean or RJ on from their morning show.
Yeah.
That feels more fair. But perhaps we'll do something. They're going to want to talk. I'll put it that way. That's for sure. Where'd the schedule go? Over here. Tennessee. Are the folks in Nashville going to care by December what their team's doing?
No.
The Saints, they're always crazy. I'll probably wind up doing something in New Orleans. I know
Talking
some folks
food.
down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they can ask me questions about the Commanders. I'll ask them questions about the about what sandwiches I should eat if I go down there. Anthony, what are the chances that if the Commanders are really good that we can take a class field trip down to New Orleans in December?
That would be a lot of fun. I love New Orleans.
I do too. I know someone who would host us.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I know some people down there too.
Yeah, one of the really fine restaurants down there, the general manager is a former DC guy who is a listener to the station / the stations. So
what's it called?
It's Brennan's, which is like one of the best restaurants in the world.
Say no more.
So might have
Say
to
no more.
talk to Christian about that. Hey, can we do our stupid show from your fancy restaurant?
That would be lit.
That'd be fun. G&D have done it before. These guys have had their fun. Let us have some fun. But I think folks in New Orleans are probably going to want to do something. Then we could just be like, hey, come down to Brennan's. We can do the crossover in person. Eagles, again, depends on how they're feeling. Falcons, we got some friends in Atlanta, and that could be a huge game. So we definitely could do crossover December 29th with the Falcons. And then the Cowboys, again, like, we'll see where that goes. Man, if that's like a win and in game, we might have to go down to Dallas.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Been
covered a
Dallas
lot of
once.
games. Covered a lot of games in that stadium.
A lot of fun.
Been a while. Food's pretty good.
Really?
In the press box? Yeah.
I would hope so.
Have we not
Jerry.
talked about that? How many times Jerry Jones has fed me Thanksgiving? Not personally, but theoretically.
Oh, because of the press box food?
Yeah, press box food on Thanksgiving in Dallas, they do it right.
Some good turkey?
Yeah. Stuffings, casseroles, mac and cheese, the whole deal.
You need it, man.
Yeah, got to. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I think a lot of people are going to want to talk to us. I think if they win this weekend, some of your favorite radio personalities, perhaps, that you see around, some of them might wind up on national TV next week. I don't know if that's going to be me, but like, people are going to want to talk about this team.
Yep.
It's already happening. So could be fun. Could be fun. All right, here's what we got for the rest of the show here on the Team 980. We will hear much more from Jayden Daniels and Dan Quinn coming up at 6 o'clock in our Pick 6. 6:30, following that, we have Clinton Yates, who has questions for me about the Commanders, as always, but also I have a question for him. Speaking of, actually, Anthony, I just had an idea. I'm going to ask Clinton at 6:30. I hope he doesn't get mad at me for doing this. I'm going to ask Clinton at 6:30 how many wins the Commanders need to get before he invites me on ESPN Daily.
Oh, right on the spot.
This is one of my best friends in the whole planet.
Uh-huh.
He hosts a big, giant daily national podcast. He's going to be talking about this team. How long till I get to come on?
Is his show daily?
That is the premise of ESPN Daily, yes.
Okay. Now that's
You think that is a joke when we say it every week? ESPN Daily, which is available daily. Yeah, that's not a joke. I mean, it's a bit. It's not a joke.
Yeah.
So how long till I get to be on ESPN Daily if the Commanders, especially like if they win this weekend, can I come on ESPN Daily next week?
These are the questions we need answers to, Craig.
Hardcore journalism coming up at 6:30. We're going to ask Clinton to his face. So that's coming up at 6:30.
Is that the first or last question?
I'm thinking I'm going to ask him first.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
And he'll probably ask me a bunch of questions, but that's fine. It's a good time. So yeah, we'll talk to Clinton coming up at 6:30. And then coming up next, all this fun happiness comes to an end for me because it's Competition Wednesday and I have to spin the stupid wheel again. Shut up, Anthony. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We got the 3-shot set up, Ant.
Sir.
That is the wheel of mediocre punishment.
So beautiful.
That taunt me. See how that goes. Your record is so stellar over the course of time.
Oh, it is not.
Go ahead. Just try to go ahead. Say what you want to say.
Sometimes
like
Craig,
it ain't gonna come back around at some point.
Hey, look, the tables do turn. And they turn fast, you know?
Yeah. And I'm also a lot meaner when I talk smack than you are. I will hurt your feelings.
Greg, all I'm gonna tell you is it feels good to finally be on this side of the fence, you know?
Yeah, no, I get it. It's Competition Wednesday here on the Hoffman Show. We are we compete in 3 games head to head. We also pick we pick 3 games against the spread. We pick a 4th head to head just in case as a tiebreaker, and we will now review how that went from last week, and then we will spin the wheel. Whoever lost, I think you probably can get the sense of who lost already. And then we'll pick more games for next week. So, last week, Anthony, I decided to pick, for some reason known to no one, the Las Vegas Raiders. They were 2.5-point dogs against the Denver Broncos. And honestly, this had potential into the second half. It was 13-10 at halftime. Hey, Raiders just keep it close in the second half. Nope. They get worked 21-8 in the second half. 34-18 was the final. And that's 0 for 1 for your boy.
That hurts, man. That hurts. My first game that I chose was the Colts +3. And the Colts made it interesting in the second half. Joe Flacco, he had like 2 65-yard bombs to Alec Pierce to like really make the game interesting, tie it up. But Jacksonville got the last laugh. They went in with a walk-off field goal. So this game ended up being a push for me.
Oh, so I'm 0-1 after 1. You're 0-1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's that as the wheel just looms behind me. I'm not gonna lie, Anthony, because I had so much trouble picking games last week. I literally didn't know what games I wanted to pick.
Yeah.
The one game I could remember was that I picked Dallas +2.5 against Pittsburgh. Obviously, Dallas goes down late. They survive absolute disaster at the goal line when Dak Prescott leaps on the fumble. On 4th down, they score. Dallas wins and thus covers fairly easily at that point. So I, through 2 games, am 1-1-0. And how did you do in your second game?
My second game, I had the Packers -3. The Rams made this one interesting. Jordan Love threw a pick from his 2-yard line, pick 6. So that made things interesting, but in the end, they end up being able to pull it out, and they end up winning by 5. So I am now 1-0-1. Packers -3.
All right, and then I had the Buffalo Bills -1. If Sean McDermott just didn't do the dumbest possible things at the end of this game, then at least maybe I get to overtime.
Yeah.
I should have at least gotten to overtime, Anthony. So the fact that the Bills lost by 3, and thus I lose by 4, if you will, if they get to overtime and they kick a field goal and win, I win. I actually don't feel that bad about that pick.
Nope.
I do feel bad about the result of that pick because that doesn't help me at all. I still lost, but at least from a process standpoint, it wasn't the craziest thing. Although I also think that probably that game should have been worse.
Yeah, it should have been. It should have been.
Well, I lost anyway.
Yep, because my last game was the Commanders -3, and we all know how that went.
Yeah.
They put belt to butt Sunday afternoon, and that concludes my Wednesday pick. So I went 2-0-1, and then also I think I would have got the tiebreaker as well.
You would have. I decided Carolina +4 was worth investing in as a tiebreaker. They lost by 16. No, sorry, they lost by 26.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy Dalton.
Talk
Never
about-
trusted Ginger again.
Yeah. Ooh. That's harsh.
Yeah. Well, you got a 4-point line and lose by 26. Sometimes it'd be like that. Yeah. Okay, so that sucks. I finish. I don't have a pen today. Oh, there's a pen. That's 1, 2, and 0. You were 2, 0, and 1.
Yes, sir.
I do believe that means this wheel behind me is behind me for a reason, and that reason is I have to spin the wheel of mediocre punishment.
Uh-oh.
As a reminder, here are the stakes. We make it mediocre punishment because we do this every week. And if we did something terrible every single week, that'd be terrible.
Yeah.
So it's mediocre punishment. Last week, I had to do 100 push-ups. Telling you right now, if I got to do 100 push-ups again, I don't think they're getting done by the end. I'm not doing it the way I did it last week. I'm willing to do it in a half-hour segment. I just want to prepare myself. So, like, tomorrow, I think I would probably do it. Okay. Or I could do it next Wednesday. But my body hurts right now, bro. I don't feel like doing 100 push-ups.
I bet it would. I don't blame you.
Or do I just have to do it, and that's kind of the way the cookie crumbles?
Yeah, I think you just got to do it.
Son of a gun. Okay, so 100 push-ups. That's what I had to do last week. There's also a fantasy sub. That is what I got to do for Anthony when he lost in week 2, where I got to go into his fantasy lineup, so he would get to go into mine and make any sub. I have no power or control over that. He just gets to say, hey, that's your fantasy lineup for this week. Sorry, sucker. It says extra hot wings. It's not supposed to say extra hot wings. It's supposed to be like pretty hot wings. Mango habanero level if you're a B-dubs fanatic. So we can figure out that, but it's 5 very hot wings. An ice bath, you got to go 3, 4, 5 minutes?
It was 3 minutes.
3 minutes in an ice bath. Buy the other person lunch. And then last but not least, the costume show where we say for a show, is the show too much? I kind of feel like it should be a costume hour. That's more in line with the mediocre punishment.
Okay. That's more reasonable, I guess.
Yeah. So next Wednesday during the 5 o'clock hour, you'd have to wear a silly disguise, the glasses and the nose and the mustache thing, which we can get on Amazon, I presume, by next Wednesday fairly easily because I can get almost anything delivered to my house by 7 p.m. because that's the world we live in. Okay, time to spin the wheel. Anthony, are you ready?
Yes, sir. Make it a good one, man.
Okay, hold on. Sorry, we have to adjust the wheel because it's caught on the chair that it's sitting on.
Yep. There you go. Extend those legs. There we go. Lean it up just a little bit. Oh, okay.
All right. The wheel is free.
Uh-oh. Oh, you got ice bath? Oh,
yikes.
Oh, my gosh. An ice bath?
That is what it says. It just barely eked over the fantasy sub. All right, so I got 3 minutes in an ice bath.
Oh my gosh.
I think I'm gonna have to talk to my wife about this. Whether I just do that. I do have a bathtub at home in our townhouse, so I could theoretically just do this at home. Like we would get like a bag of ice from a gas station, and fill it up and do it. The other way we could do this is we have occasionally gone to a cold tub place, and so. If we want to go, and I typically do not stay in for 3 minutes, but I can just go to the cold tub place and be like, all right, we're in it for 3 minutes.
Oh,
so
my
I will talk
gosh.
to Rachel to see whether we want to go for a cold tub, because there's also like a sauna situation. So do we want to go do that and do the full recovery day, but I have to stay in the ice bath longer for torture, and on some level put it on video? So you guys can see me suffer, or do I just get a bag of ice and do it that way? But I'm good for it. 3 minutes in an ice bath. Ouch.
Hey, look, more power to you, Craig.
I mean, there are no rules. I can do this after I do my long run and just try to make it feel good.
I mean, that's one way to do it.
Yeah, so I'll figure that out. It might happen on Saturday.
Oh
my gosh! Might go run 10 miles and then get in an ice bath, and convince myself that it's good for me. Yep. All right, that's the wheel of mediocre punishment. Ice bath for your boy. Coming up next, we pick the next set of games. 3 games against the spread, 1 head-to-head on tiebreaker grounds. That's next Competition Wednesday. Then we're back to Dan Quinn and Jayden Daniels speaking on their Competition Wednesday ahead of this weekend's matchup with the Ravens. And our pick 6 coming up at 6 o'clock. It's Competition Wednesday on the Hoffman Show. Team 980 always live as well on the free Odyssey app. I have spun that wheel of mediocre punishment for my loss in week 4. Time to pick games week 5. Time to pick games for week 6, Anthony. Are you ready? 3 games apiece We do not have to pick the same games. However, we do need to pick one that we agree on as a tiebreaker. So we do not discuss our games ahead of time. So let's see where we are going to go. You are on the tee first, if you will, as you are the reigning champion. That's a fine if we still did the fine system. I realize it was for effect, but come on. Can't be clearing our throat. People listening in earbuds right now, and you just cleared your throat in their ears.
Yes. I apologize.
I was about to say, is it just going to say okay, or are you going to apologize?
I apologize, guys.
Sorry, I'm salty right now because I lost.
First up, Craig, the team we just played, the Cleveland Browns. They are set to play against our divisional rival, the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think I'm going to take the Eagles minus 9.5 at home.
That is an enormous number.
The Eagles get back Devontae Smith. They get back A.J. Brown. They still have Saquon already. I think the Eagles are finally ready to, silence the critics, go out there, put on a good performance against this Cleveland Browns team that has been horrible through 5 weeks of the NFL season.
Yeah. I'm not going to say I would pick, if I had to pick this game, I would probably pick Philadelphia as well. This line has moved. So my guy Tony Squares and I, we have started doing something on YouTube on Mondays called our First Impression Selections, Anthony, where we, on Monday mornings, pick all of the games against the spread for the next week, even though the games just happened and we haven't even seen Monday Night Football yet. This was, when we did this on Monday, it was minus 8.5. So you're telling me you got it at 9.5.
Sadly.
Yikes.
Sadly.
Yikes. All right. My first one is also going to be a pretty big number for a favorite to cover. This line hasn't moved at all since Monday, though. I'm going to take the Houston Texans minus 7 against the New England Patriots. Drake May is making his first ever start. Mm-hmm. The reason that he hasn't started a game yet is because they're scared about putting a rookie who does hold on to the ball a little bit behind a bad offensive line. Anthony, do you know who leads the NFL in pressures as an individual player?
Well, it was Myles Garrett, but maybe it's changed now. Maybe it's Danielle Hunter?
That is correct.
Okay.
It is Danielle Hunter. And the Texans are the number one pressure team in the league. So it seems like a bad week to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take the Houston Texans minus 7. Nico Collins' injury does scare me. It scares me more for them against not the Patriots.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, Craig. That was one of my games.
You can still take it.
No.
Okay.
I'm gonna pick some different games.
Okay. Go right ahead.
Cross that one off. For my second game, Mr. Hoffman, I will be taking the Steelers on the road in Vegas.
Yep.
minus 3. Part of it, they don't know who their quarterback is going to be, man. There's so much quarterback dysfunction.
Well, they do know now. Aiden O'Connell is going to be the starter.
Okay.
Thanks for paying attention on what's trending.
I had a lot going on over here.
It's fair.
But even
Only
if
said it
Aiden
twice.
O'Connell is starting, I still think the Pittsburgh defense just presents too much of a problem for any quarterback. Whether it was going to be Gardner, if it was going to be Aiden, it didn't necessarily matter. I like this number, Pitt minus 3 on the road. They got to bounce back also. So
I'm gonna see if I can find another game, but that was on my list as well. So I'm gonna try to not double up as well for old time's sake here. But I do think that that probably is gonna be me as well. This is bad because the line has moved and it was better on Monday, but I'm still going to do it. I think the Saints are in a bit of free fall. Spencer Rattler is going to play this weekend, and he's gonna have to face Todd Bowles' defense. I don't care that they're on the road. I am taking the Tampa Bay Bucks minus 3.5. That seems fairly easy to me. The Bucks offense. By the way, they're also +4 on the rest days. The Bucks coming off of Thursday Night Football. The Saints coming off of Monday Night Football. You saw what happened in the Giants Seahawks game because of that. So yeah, I'm going to take Tampa minus 3.5. With Spencer Rattler at quarterback and Baker Mayfield going in there and putting up some serious points on the Saints defense.
I love your games, Craig. First, Houston, New England, now Tampa, New Orleans. I'm loving that. I'm torn though. Actually, I got a good third game.
Okay.
I'm going to take the Falcons.
I was looking at this one too.
And it's a big number.
But you're taking Atlanta.
Atlanta -6 over the Carolina Panthers. I think their defense steps up to the plate. I think their offense also steps up to the plate. And I think this is the first game we really see Atlanta play some real complimentary football, and they blow these Wildcats out.
Yeah, I think that definitely was the side I was on as well. I'm not gonna pick that game. I'm not gonna pick the other one that you picked. I am gonna take a wacky here. I'm taking the Jags. They are 2.5-point dogs on the road, but they're on the road. All right, it's the Hoffman Show. Final hour here on the Team 980. Always live as well in the free Odyssey app and, of course, on YouTube at the Team 980. Got a lot to get to before Clinton Yates joins us at 6:30, so let's hit it. It's time for the Pick Six.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, of course, the headlines start with the quarterbacks.
Number 1.
Jayden Daniels, Lamar Jackson. They are similar in a lot of ways. They're very different in some ways, and Dan Quinn was asked today about the similarities between the two.
Both of these two are elite competitors, like at the highest level, and that shows on the tape. You know, the way they extend plays, the way they finish, the way they lead their group. So that's the part. If I was to make a comparison, it would be something intangible like that. Both of them have their own unique ways about them, but in this game, there's all these guys are fantastic competitors. And then, like in most profession, there's the elite, and these two guys are elite at it.
The competition level, like you see it in how they play, the never say die attitude on plays, the way they are able to extend and find ways to win with their legs, with their arms, with a combination of the two. So what is it that Jayden Daniels enjoys about watching Lamar, a guy that certainly he's watched plenty of?
Just how he plays the position, whether that's running, throwing, making plays. I know he's a fierce competitor, so I respect that about him.
Simple enough, but it's not like he enjoys all of the comparisons between these two guys for reasons that I think are pretty obvious.
Yeah, I think it's go out there and just appreciate each individual for who they are. So I don't like when people really like try to compare me to Lamar, and vice versa. We're two different players. And just go out there, just appreciate what's the quarterback play that's being played. So that's what I try to do, is just appreciate everybody for who they are.
I totally respect that because they are different in a lot of ways. I think the thing that is similar, though, that's undeniable that I'm curious about in this game is they are so, like, what you have to do against them as a defense is similar. Like, you have to rush with such discipline. You have to be able to tackle in space. You have to be more cognizant and have tougher decisions to make when they roll out as a defensive back. Do I go pursue the quarterback and get ready to go tackle a really fast guy if he runs? Or do I stick on my guy because they can make all these throws off platform? And Jayden has displayed a level of arm strength to make throws that maybe we didn't even think he could. Like, he did not throw a ball 50 yards in the air for a completion in college. He's got 2 in the last 4 weeks. Like, that is a different, and one of them, by the way, was a 56-yarder rolling out to his right on the run. It wasn't like he set up and loaded. Like, that is a different level of deep ball arm strength than he had previously displayed. And so Lamar can do that kind of stuff as well. They're obviously both so tremendously dangerous if they get out in space. So the way you have to play them in terms of keeping them in the pocket and being super disciplined in your rush lanes is similar. So does either one of these teams benefit from having seen that in training camp? We're still fairly early in the season. The Ravens, for the guys that have been around, have been dealing with that with Lamar in training camp for years. Does that come into play? But they are different. I think Jayden's processing is a little bit better in certain spots. Lamar obviously has an institutional knowledge that is higher than Jayden's, and he uses that to his advantage. Lamar is a better, open field, elusive type of guy. Jayden, straight line speed maybe a little better. I don't know. Lamar's pretty freaking fast in a straight line. But there definitely are some differences in how these guys go about it. And I also understand if you're Jayden, you don't want to be compared to a 2-time MVP because you've only played 5 games and you're trying to probably die down the hype just a little bit.
Number 2.
All right, number 2 in our pick 6. How about Derrick Henry? He's large. He's in charge. He's very fast. And playing him probably sucks if you're a defensive player or a defensive coach like Dan Quinn.
I think first off, you better have a really good tackling plan, and that's, part of his success through the years. not only like sometimes you see a big back Nicky and you just think he's just going to run people over, and he has that part of his game, but he can also stiff arm. We've seen that. And he also has like a really good jab step. So when you're thinking, hey, I'm going to go take my shot on him, he puts a foot in the ground to make you miss. And so that's, to me, what makes, part of his superpower, the ability to have all three ways to stiff arm you, lower a shoulder, and then make you miss. Most, not all the time, but a lot of times the big guys may have, I'm going to run you over, stiff arm, and just play that powerful style. But when you put all ingredients together, you better have a really good tackling plan. And against a player like that, and any good running back, you want to make sure you're having as few one-man tackles as you can.
Yeah, I would say that you definitely don't want to try to tackle him with one guy. And by the way, if all that wasn't enough, if he makes you miss, he can run away from you. He can run 21, 22 miles an hour away from defensive backs. So the big play ability for Henry. I mean, look at the game last week. He was like 14 carries for, 50 yards or whatever in overtime. And then lo and behold, all of a sudden, 50-yarder sets up game-winning field goal. Ravens win. Avoiding that stiff arm. You don't want to be the guy on the poster. Dan Quinn, any ideas on how to do that?
Yeah, you have to work that technique just like any other, where you have to break a stiff arm down before you enter into the tackle. And but that is one of the things that he does, really well. Is so like going through the scout teams and going through the week and evaluating tape and how do you drill it? Is it the same as playing him live? Like, hell no. Like, there's no one that we have on our team that can simulate him for practice. Yeah, we could. So nobody. But to put it very bluntly, but you can work the technique, and that's what you have to do.
I'm trying to think. Who should the Commanders try to have emulate Derrick Henry? Like, do you have Anthony? Do you try to have like, hey, Daron Payne, go stiff arm your teammates? Who's strong enough, big enough that you feel like you could break down that stiff arm? Luvu?
I was thinking Luvu. I was thinking maybe Jamie because he's fast.
Ooh, Jamin's a good one.
He's fast.
Not a bunch of great answers.
Nah.
Because those dudes aren't used to stiff arming people.
And people aren't built like Derrick Henry either.
No. And I mean, B-Rob, but
Derrick Henry got a couple of inches on him.
He ain't built like he ain't built like Derrick Henry because no one's built like Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
You want to know what's really funny about Derrick Henry and the build stuff and the Commanders? I remember in 2019, my last year on the beat, covering a game at Tennessee and watching Henry warm up. And I'm pretty sure the guy next to him, I was like, I cannot believe those two dudes play the same position, was Jeremy McNichols. And just being like, and McNichols, now we think it was like, McNichols ain't small. He's short. And you will see that when he stands next to Derrick Henry, who's 6'2", 235, runs 22 miles an hour, and will stiff arm you into next week. Not very fun.
It's a little scary.
Not very fun.
Number 3.
Also not very fun if you are a rookie quarterback dealing with blitzes. Jayden's actually done quite a bit with it so far. He's done a very, very good job. However, the Ravens may be taking that up even another level from what Jim Schwartz and company did. How concerning is that for Dan Quinn?
They've got a real identity, and they have for a long time. The way they've, played defense and selected players and, from Ozzie all the way through Eric, and it's been really, really effective. What's happened more, through the last few years is probably more, you're seeing simulated pressures where sometimes it's four-man rush, looks like a blitz, and Baltimore and others, and ourselves included, incorporate some of that to show a blitz, but then play a coverage behind it. And I think as good as the offenses are, you're trying to find every advantage you can. But one thing that's been sure, Zach, he's on it, and as a first-time coordinator to, just there's a real standard about how they play defense. And not only has he upheld that, he lived it, so there's different, understanding of that, I would think from his point of view.
Of course, talking about Zach Gore, the Ravens defensive coordinator, but he's not Mike Macdonald, and a lot of the pieces that supported Mike Macdonald are not there anymore either. So it is something that they are trying to find an identity in Baltimore. I mean, they have the identity. They're trying to find the execution, and he as a play caller is trying to find his rhythm. So it's going to be interesting if Cliff Kingsbury can get him a couple times, get some big plays, as this pass defense is rated 31st in the NFL. More of our pick six next, as we will get to some of the more storyline-y type of things, non-football. Is it actually a rivalry? What about the travel? The fact that the Commanders are a road game that really ain't that much further than Ashburn when you compare it to Landover, and all the hype. How are they handling it inside the building? But first, let's get an update on the latest in the world of women's sports, brought to you by Wawa. Gotta have a Wawa. Clinton Yates joining us coming up at 6:30. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Very important question that we're going to ask Clinton, Anthony. How many more wins do the Commanders need before I get to be on ESPN Daily?
I'm looking forward to this answer, man.
This is what the people must know. All right, what they must know for right now, though, is the other big storylines of the day. It is Pick 6 Part 2. Hit that music, and let's party.
Number 4.
All right, number 4 in our Pick 6. Is this a rivalry? We know it's a big game, but hey, Beltway, this, DC, Baltimore, like clearly there's something. They're only 30-something miles away, depending on how you calculate it, where you calculate it from, 30, 40. Stadium to stadium, it's like 33, I believe. So is this actually a rivalry? I will say this before we hear from Dan Quinn and Jayden Daniels on this. I would hope it becomes a rivalry because that means both teams are good. The Chiefs and Ravens has become a rivalry. You know, the Patriots and Colts back in the day, rivalry. It'd be sweet if these two teams were playing each other on a more regular basis because they're both winning their division and then they're matching up the next season. So, is this a rivalry? New guy to the equation, Dan Quinn.
You know, for me, first, kind of getting here and getting started, I didn't naturally think of that coming in because of the division and the history of what the NFC East has been so much with the teams that way. So that was probably the first thing I thought with rivalries with Washington of the NFC East. I think there's always a connection when cities are, closer by, but the fact that we're not in the same division and the same conference, for me, my first, time playing Baltimore as a Commander, my first thought was the East first.
I think that most people would agree. I'd be curious to know what Baltimore folks think. I think probably they would agree that the Bengals and the Bengals and the Steelers, especially the Steelers, would be their biggest rivalry. They enjoy beating up on the Browns because of the history between those two franchises. The fact that obviously Cleveland, the Colts would be that, but like the Browns and Ravens came back into the NFL about the same time. So there's a lot of different stuff to consider there. But I think the geographic closeness plus the quarterback superstar power plus a lot of winning could create a rivalry. What does Jayden Daniels think about the potential of that?
I'm just new here. I mean, that's for other people. That's for other people to determine. For me, it's just go out there and be able to play a game, play another game. It's not really any rivalry or stuff like that. Obviously, just this area, the DMV, having two teams within, a certain radius. Obviously, people could look at it as a rivalry, but for us, man, it's just another game.
Look at Jayden dropping the geometry terms. Certain radius. Yeah.
I don't remember the last time I used the word radius.
I don't either. I dropped some word the other day that people were like, dang, that was an SAT word.
Rigmarole?
No, it wasn't rigmarole.
All right.
Anthony just wants to show off the fact that he can spell some very random words. Rigmarole. Which doesn't have an A in the middle. It's rigmarole. That's what I learned when Anthony spelled it for me the other day.
Yes, sir.
Learn something new every day. The other day it was how to spell rigmarole. Anyway, the point is, it's not a rivalry yet, but it'd be cool if it became one.
Number 5.
That said, there's a ton of attention, of course, on this game. And the social media kind of blow up here this week and frankly, the real media blow up. Like NFL Network and ESPN are talking about this game all the time, and it's only going to get louder as the week goes. So, how does Jayden Daniels process the fact that this is with, he'll sit down with Jim Nantz and Tony Romo later this week for their production meeting. It's the number one crew. How does he process the fact that this is the game of the week for the league?
That's for the league to figure out. That's for what the people to talk about for us, man. We're just going out there and we're just playing a football game. That just happened to be the next opponent up for us. So we're going to focus this week on trying to get better and execute the game plan on Sunday.
That kid is so on it. His ability to just stay here, because I think some people know they're supposed to say that, especially quarterbacks. Some quarterbacks know that they are supposed to say the right thing. I think he just is like, this is how I think. He's showing up at the facility at the same time, 4 a.m. every single day. He's going through the same work process. He's doing the same stuff. And it's not going to change unless he finds, as he goes, something that he can do better. Or maybe I don't need to do that. I can be a little more efficient with my time. Like, he will refine things over the course of his career, but it's not going to be because, I'm going to show up at 3:58 this week or 3:45 this week instead of 4 because it's Ravens week. It's because Tony Romo's on the call. Like, nah. He's got his process, and that's great that he's got that. Dan Quinn probably wishes he had 53 of those guys. How is he handling it with everybody else?
I think what I try to do all the time, Chick, is really as often as we can, we try to make it about us and our improvement and just being absolutely obsessed with trying to get better and how do we play. And so going into the game, what are the things specifically we want to do better and how do we go after it? And knowing that it does come down to us first, that's how we dig in right away, because there's so many things to do before we even get to the game. So like we got to get today great and throw a hell of a Wednesday, and then we'll get into tomorrow and all the process. But I do like the process for every day. Like, today's about our competition, what we do. Tomorrow we talk about the ball. We did a big push on tackling today, breaking tackles, and in last game we saw that trajectory going in the right way in terms of our times we were able to make somebody miss and how many tackles we missed. And so when that number goes in the ratio that we like, we're making progress. And so we got to continue to do that with the ball. So to be in the minus, for a game is not what we're looking for. So we got plenty of work to do, and but we just try to make it about this time. How do we get better? And then we'll take it into the next. And then by the time we get to the game day, man, we will absolutely let it rip, and it's going to be an awesome environment, but much to do before we get into that environment. So a lot of work to do before it's go time.
A lot of work to do before it's go time. I love Quinn's approach here because we've all had that, we've all had a version of this at work, right? There's something big that's looming, but we have so much stuff to do right now. We can't worry about what's happening over there. I got to get this done. What do you mean the thing that's happening on Saturday? I'll worry about that on Saturday. And when you're that locked in on Wednesday, that's great. Also, I want to inquire more about the breaking tackle drills and stuff. I think that's cool. I've never heard Coach talk about specific, breaking tackles, or obviously coaches talk about tackling. They're doing obviously a fantastic job of teaching it as they've dropped their missed tackles week over week. But when we talked with Inside Access, the afternoon show up in Baltimore at 5 o'clock in our live crossover segment, they talked about how the Ravens aren't doing a very good job tackling this week. So if the Commanders can break a few tackles, perhaps some big plays to be made.
Number 6.
Last but not least in our pick 6, this road trip that the Commanders are taking is the only road trip they will take in October. They have the home game against Cleveland. They're in Baltimore, which when you go from Ashburn cannot be more than 10 miles further. You have to take a different route, but it cannot be more than 10 miles further than from Ashburn to Baltimore than it is Ashburn to Landover. It is basically the same road trip for these guys, and I'm guessing they'll probably treat it as a road trip, maybe go up there the night before, but they might often go to the team hotel the night before. Maybe they even go to their home team hotel and then just drive up the whatever version of BW Parkway or 95 they want to take to the game. But point being, they got the one, and then they have the 2 home games against Carolina and Chicago. Is there an advantage to that, Dan Quinn?
I think there's, looking on it now, it was unusual. And I don't know how many road games I got to go on a bus, to the game. So that's a pretty good gig. We're not, flying from Dulles over to BWI. So going into that and having your time zones into the same spot for a while, I don't know if it's an advantage, but it's certainly not a disadvantage. When you go on the road and coming back and getting your body clock back into order, that's a big deal. But it helps you on the next week. Sometimes those late nights, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. arrivals, make it more challenging.
That is so huge. It just lets your recovery get off to such a better start, which means your next week is better, you're crisper in practice, and then your game is good. Repeat. It's a huge stretch and an important stretch, especially for a team with a late bye, to not take on a bunch of extra stuff as they wait for that reprieve in early December. That's our pick 6 biggest storylines of the day. You'll hear from Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Witt at this point tomorrow. Up next, you'll hear from ESPN's Clinton Yates. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. What a show, what a show. If you missed any of it, make sure you check the Hoffman Show podcast. And if you're into podcasts, may I also recommend to you ESPN Daily. You'll find our friend Clinton Yates, who joins us now. And Clinton, I have a very important question for you.
Yes.
How many more wins do the Commanders need until the Commanders are a big enough story that I get to come on ESPN Daily?
You're making me laugh way too early when I'm on the West Coast. I mean, look, I'm going to say that here's my life situation right now.
Okay.
Every Sunday morning, I get 2 to 3 dozen texts that say, when are you coming back to the bandwagon? Blah, blah, blah. And that's not even the point. But the reason why that's important, Greg, is because, dude, pride has returned to the fan base in a way that I haven't seen, quite frankly, since our friend Bob was there. And that was more so just sort of naked, ambition. But this is different. I'm hearing stories about Jayden showing up at the facility at 4 a.m, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, okay, this is a real football franchise? Okay. And they have the wins to prove it right now. It's something to be remarked upon. And I will say this, Commanders fans, now is the time to be excited. It is as simple as that. It is just the NFL. Week to week matters. Get pumped.
That's great. You didn't answer the question, and I'm a hardcore journalist. How many more wins do they need? If they beat Baltimore, can I be on ESPN Daily next week? What bigger story are you going to have?
If they get to, let's just say they get to something ridiculous like 15 wins, you know what I'm saying?
That's the bar?
Yeah.
What?
Gregory, listen to me. The first time I ever set foot in an NFL stadium at RFK, do you know how many games they won that season?
Let's see. It probably would have been like 10 or 11 sometime.
No, it was 1991, 92, the last time they won everything. Double digits. Okay, we'll rationalize it down to double digits. When they get to double digits, if they get to, then yes.
Okay, how many more wins till John Keim gets to come on? Because he's your colleague, idiot. I'm just kidding.
Okay, all right.
Clinton Yates, ESPN, with us here on the Hoffman Show. You can check out ESPN Daily. Also, he's covering all the MLB playoffs. So if you want any playoff baseball, Clinton is your guy to go to for that. But, you know, I've tried to talk about this in a way that's not like, savaging other people who don't deserve it, such as the aforementioned Bob Griffin. Like, this is different, right? Jayden Daniels in showing up at the facility at 4 a.m., the adults that are in charge on the coaching staff, the lack of chaos that is coming down from the ownership suite. What was the thing that kind of pushed you over the edge to be like, oh, no, like this is really different. This is a time where, hey, if you're still looking around trying to find the door to the bandwagon, find it and pull that thing open and get on as fast as you can, versus the other upticks in production that they've had sporadically / randomly in the last however many years, 12 years it's been since 2012.
Well, here's the thing. The football is one thing. The vibe is another. And I think that if you can go into a game and you look at a situation like, I don't know, the Cleveland Browns, who have committed gods of money, gabs, whatever, a tons of money to a person who is, we're not going to get into the bad person. We can get into the bad quarterback of it. And below them out, 40 burger, without necessarily getting down in distance and off the sticks that much, and actually having confidence in the offense based on a rookie who is at the quarterback position, I'm sorry. From a simple morale standpoint, this is huge. Never mind football in the context of what's happening from the plays, but this is what people have been waiting for in terms of this is clear and present to see from even somebody who is from the District of Columbia, who does not live there anymore. That's a quarterback. And you don't have to get crazy about pumping your chest and popping your jersey and saying, we got a franchise guy, because a franchise guy doesn't matter if you don't win anything. Buffalo, I'm talking to you. What I'm saying is that watchable, likable, dissectable football from Sunday to Sunday is the first step back to respectability. And this team, it doesn't matter how. but they are getting it done. Beating bad teams is what good teams do. That happened last week.
Yeah, and they've beat a couple in a row, and not only that have they beaten them, they've beaten them sideways, beaten the brakes off. They're actually the number one offensive team in the NFL scoring. They hadn't gotten 30 points in back-to-back weeks since 2015. They're averaging 31 a game. So, yeah, the offense rolling. Here's another question I have for you, and this is always fun, like when a team can change how you see the sport or see sports in general. And that's kind of happening, not necessarily that it's changing, but it's reinforcing certain things or making me re-examine the weight of certain things. How did you feel about Dan Quinn's hiring and seeing the way that they flipped the script here? How has that thought or changed how you think of NFL head coach hirings, if it's changed it at all?
Well, you know what I say all the time is that quarterback is the worst coach position in the league. And the reason I say that is because head coaches, GMs, quarterback coaches, and offensive coordinators oftentimes seem to all be on different, levels in terms of what they think makes sense. We saw this with Bob, not to bring it back up, but the head coach and owner were on two completely different wavelengths, and they ran a Ferrari into the ground trying to prove that, he could be a Toyota Tacoma. In this case, it seems everybody's on the same page. Kingsbury got it moving. Dan Quinn not getting in the way. Sorry, Arizona, that Cliff didn't work out, but it's working out pretty well here. And I mean that in the context of just somebody who watches football. I don't care what team it is. It happens to be the Commanders. It happens to be Daniels. And I think that if nothing else has gone right in this season, wins and losses are one thing. Results are going to happen. But it feels like, at least from where my vantage point is, that there is some cohesion in the unit from a, just a basic game plan standpoint. It helps that it's working. It helps that they play bad teams. The Ravens coming up is a different discussion, but I think that in terms of continuity is a major part of this. Do people like working with each other, and does it produce results? I think the answer to both of those questions are yes. And that alone is remarkable when it comes to what the history of this franchise is.
Yeah, Dan definitely knows ball and like what works and what doesn't. But I think that idea of like these guys like going to work every day. And you're just going to work better when you go to work every day in an atmosphere that's good. And Quinn established that from day one. He knew what he was looking for in terms of people. And I would say Dan and Cliff both are guys that weren't their best in previous stops. They made huge mistakes.
Is the word you're looking for, Gregory. They were both cast-offs who have come together on a raft in the Potomac River. And it's not like it's Washington crossing the Delaware, but, they're getting there in terms of putting the squad together to go into, I know you guys love these terms in this market, to go into battle.
Sure. Clint Yates with us here on the Hoffman Show. Okay, we've reached the portion of the interview, Clinton, where I know you have questions for me because you told me that you do. So what is your weekly Commander's question for Craig, even though you're coming on my show?
So there was a human being named Gambling Partner Slim. He used to come on that station a lot, who happens to be my homeboy. And he was incensed immediately after the game about the 7-point spread. I don't know what the spread is against the Ravens right now. Is it still at 7? Do we have these numbers?
I will look it up as you continue to talk. It was 6. It was 6.5 last time I looked.
6.5. But the point is this: it is entirely possible that the Ravens blow out the Commanders, and that is not a bad loss. I think that is something to understand because there are multiple things at play here. The Ravens are a team that is established and know what they can do. They still have, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the league. I said it with my chest. And if that team, the Commanders, walks into Baltimore and gets popped, okay, bars have been set. There is no reason to be yelling and screaming about the Super Bowl at this point, as much as you can be happy as Commanders fans about the week-to-week stuff. But the Ravens are, dare I say, a real football team right now. This is the real football team test, as far as I'm concerned. Do you agree?
Yes. All in all, I do. Hold on. First of all, you think Lamar's better than Pat, or are you just not counting Pat because he's like an alien?
Lamar Jackson has revolutionized the NFL in the context of you don't need running backs, and they have one. I mean, look, Pat is fine, but I will always tune into the Lamar Jackson show first. Pat Mahomes
That's fine. Just we can talk about the best in the league versus your favorite. I think. Anyway, we can talk about that. We don't want to get sidetracked. The point is, yes, Baltimore is a big boy football team that has an identity, that has known what they're doing for a long time. They present very specific challenges to Washington in terms of how well they've run the football, with both the quarterback and the running back. And Washington's run defense is still something that I have questions about. But I could see literally the entire range of outcomes. I could see a Baltimore blowout where they just are like, hey, this is a big game. We've played in big games. Most of y'all haven't, outside of like Bobby Wagner. And there's a level of intensity to this that y'all are not familiar with. And it'll be a learning experience for Washington. And ultimately, I think a good thing in the long run, because I actually trust the staff and the players here to make it a good thing. Obviously, it could be a very close game. Either team wins. The other thing, though, is like Baltimore's pass defense is currently ranked 31st in the league. And the Commanders, the Commanders, they're good at passing the football. Jayden Daniels, good at that. Terry McLaurin, making big plays down the field on the regular the last bunch of weeks. De'Ami Brown finally got loose deep last week. So I could also see a situation where this Commanders' defensive growth is real. They sell out to stop the run. Lamar is kind of spotty. Like, he finds big plays, but if they can figure out how to cap some of those and then sell out against the run, then they could hold him, and maybe get a couple turnovers, and lo and behold, like the Commanders put up a bunch of points, and the running game becomes irrelevant for Baltimore because they're chasing the game. And I could see a Commanders blowout. Like, was that what I'm picking? Absolutely.
Stop it, Gregory. You could see a Commanders blowout. Yeah. Are we serious?
Yeah, I would put it on the lowest of likely outcomes. I would say close either way is probably the top two. Baltimore blowout, then Washington blowout, but it's not close to 0% because of exactly what I just said. Like, if the problem is run defense and the other team can't stop the pass, if you can make the game flow in a way that they don't feel like they can run the football, then that could get away from Baltimore.
They get out of their system, and all of a sudden you're on the front.
100%. And so, the fact that we can even have this discussion, though, I think is the larger point, right? Like, the largest point is here is like, it's not crazy to be asking if the Commanders are contenders. It's not crazy through 5 weeks if you're going to name an MVP list that Jayden Daniels is on it. It's crazy because he's a rookie, but it's not like we're outsizing or we're not inflating his value. Like, that's what he's been so far. And so that is an ultimately healthy sign. And obviously we hope it sustains, and we hope that it continues, and you're still talking about him on Around the Horn in November and December. But for right now, that's who they've been. And they can absolutely compete.
Here's the last thing I'll say, Gregory, is that I thought, I'll be very honest about this, I thought the Cleveland week was going to be the week of they've got tape on the guy. Typically, after a month to 6 weeks, things change in terms of how you scout players and what they can do and their tendencies and so forth. That didn't work at all. That probably says more about the Browns at this point than it says about the Commanders. But nonetheless, 40 burger in a win matters. I think my last question to you is this, Gregory. What would it take for you to show up, Gen Pop, to just watch football at Northwest Financial, Fort Bragg, Credit Union, whatever the hell field?
That's a great question because I definitely typically don't do that. I would say this: if I was just a dude living here, didn't have the job that I have,
it would be double-digit wins.
No, I would want to go to a game right now, like straight up right now, with how entertaining this team is, plus how good they've been. If I had the need to buy a ticket to get to a game versus my season credential that lets me in every game at Northwest Stadium for free, and in a press box with food and such, then yeah, I would be looking at tickets to go to some games coming up soon for sure. Like I'm already there. I have a job to do, so I'm gonna do it and get paid as opposed to having to pay.
That to me is always the measure that matters. You're asking a brother that grew up in D.C., that went to RFK. I was there when the seats were jumping, all right? What it would take to get somebody to pay money to watch a game there is really what the only real threshold is that matters because, that's the soul of the franchise. And that is something that, even though I do not necessarily, aspire to anymore, I still do respect.
Well, then let's change the question from when do I get on ESPN Daily to if they win double-digit games, will you come back and you and I will go Gen Pop to a game together?
Gen Pop ain't happening, but I will come back to go to a game if they get to double-digit wins.
Okay.
I will absolutely do that, Gregory.
All right, excellent. We'll have our people be in touch, as in we'll text about it. Clinton Yates, everybody, watch him on Around the Horn, ESPN Daily for the pod, and then check out all the coverage at Clinton Yates on Twitter of the Major League Baseball playoffs. And we will talk to you again next week, sir. Thank you.
Absolutely. The press box food at Petticoat Park, not great.
Ugh. Yikes.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
It's Hoffman Show wrapping up here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. What a show, Ian. What a show it was.
Man, a hell of a show. Hell of a show.
First ever live crossover. That was big time. Went live at 5 with our friends up in Baltimore on Inside Access, their afternoon show at 105.7 The Fan. We had Clinton Yates. We had Ben Solak from ESPN. You heard from Jayden Daniels and Dan Quinn. And we got some pretty good things and real things. Tomorrow on the show, De'Ami Brown to start at 4 o'clock. So if you are like, well, this is the time I listen, I'm still working at 4 o'clock. Rewind feature on the Odyssey app, podcast, YouTube Rewind. We'll put it on YouTube as a clip at Craig Hoffman and at the Team 980. So no matter when it is that you typically tune in, you can find that De'Ami Brown interview if you are remotely coherent and navigating the internet, which it's 2024. If you're not, I think you got bigger problems than not being able to find the De'Ami Brown interview. Ant?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Anything else tomorrow? It's Never Read the Comments Thursday. Cliff and Joe talk. Anything else? Dan Pizzuta?
Dan Pizzuta. Never Read the Comments.
Do we have someone for 5 o'clock tomorrow?
No, we do not. It's tentative. We don't know if it's going to be Thursday, Friday.
Oh, yeah. Working on some big stuff.
Yeah.
Also, Kime said he wanted to come back on soon. So we might fire a John Kime bullet tomorrow.
Okay.
That's why you just got to stay tuned,
Yes, sir.
And then at the end of the show, we have fun.
Real things.
We're not gonna be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
That's in due time, Anthony. Don't know if we ever ended the show then before.
It is. It was a surprise to me. I was taken aback a little bit.
Yeah, you really were struggling there with the math.
Yeah.
Sometimes that math just not be mathing.
Nope.
You know what does math? $3 drinks. Even if you made as much money as Caitlin Clark has the last year. Caitlin and her teammate for the Fever, Lexi Hull, in a drive-through line, shockingly got discovered.
This is good. Do the raspberry dream with vanilla cream instead of coconut cream, please? And then can I do the summer splash also?
Can I get the spring fling with vanilla cream instead of coconut cream? Can I have the beach babe too, please?
You're Caitlin Clark, right?
Maybe.
Yep.
Part that out, please.
We'll skip over that. Beach babe? This is the
Try
summer
the
splash.
goods.
You can mix it up, kind of, maybe?
Hey, these are healthy, right?
No, but they are only $3. I love a bargain.
This isn't as good. This would be good on like a summer day.
Agreed.
Healthy, refreshing.
Mine is not healthy at all.
No, those drinks just sound like they are sugar and ice, Anthony. I don't know where they went. I don't know what they were hoping for. Caitlin seemed to be she's like, yeah, I got State Farm money, but I like a bargain.
Gotta love a bargain, man. Gotta love a bargain.
Got to love a bargain.
Are you a sugary drinker?
No, only to a point.
Ah.
I feel like that's a thing that when you're a kid, you can just tolerate so much sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to a point as an adult, and you remember your parents saying this as a kid, and then all of a sudden you get there as an adult, and you're like, I get it now, but does that make me a loser? Or you're just like, that's a little too sweet for me. Like, as a kid, you could just eat sugar.
Yeah.
Like, if you have candy that you liked as a kid, and you haven't had it in 20 years, go back and try it. You know what's going to happen? It's probably going to suck, and you're going to go, this is too sweet. I used to like this, and you know why? Because you were a child. And as a child, you can just ingest sugar, and it doesn't matter. You're like, ooh, this is good! And then you bounce off the walls and annoy the mess out of your parents. As an adult, you're like, oh. It's almost like your brain knows you have responsibilities, and you can't handle that anymore.
Yeah, I tend to, get a sugar rush when I go back and try some sweets or candy that I know I shouldn't be having.
Yeah.
But sometimes I can't resist the urge.
I mean, there's some of that stuff, like, I don't know, anything that's now dairy I can't have anyway. So it's like your M&Ms and things like that. Like, I can't even have those. So that's the life I lead, Anthony.
I know. I hate that for you, man.
Not the life I deserve.
Nope.
That's right. You all deserve another show tomorrow, so we're going to give it to you. See you then.